So I was wondering to myself what I was going to record today, and I just kind of started dinking around with a flower farm, and before I knew it, something was unfolding. Oh God, I wish I had the original picture of this. I'll probably put an image or a video or something on the screen so you can see what this was. I've been working on compacting this because you see, when we build this flower farm on our world, it's going to look something like this. There's going to be a lot of grass and a big flat sheet with tons of flowers. It's going to look super beautiful. But I need to update this piston. But it needs to look like awesome, and it didn't. So this is kind of what it's like. Instead of all this wiring up here, I've opted for pistons here. I've lowered the wiring, and these pistons very simply just turn the farm on and off. And I've wired them so that they've got observers underneath, and because this wiring would cross, it's actually really nice in there. So let's turn these on one at a time, and then update the pistons adjacent. And there you go. And that's not clicking. Oh, because that's not firing. Got it, got it, got it. Because this never fired. Why is this piston not working? Because this is being powered. Oh, nope, still nothing. Anyway, what I'm trying to do is get all the wiring nice and flat, so it looks really nice from above. Because this is actually something I'm pretty content with. There's very minimal wiring. I did test this. So before we had these pistons being budded and updated in a zero-tick fashion, and that's theoretically, that's theoretically faster. But I tested it and I got what would you call it? Rates within error margin. So it's technically 1,000 items slower, but in this case I'm actually in a single player world, so I don't think I'm running this the same as the server. Ah, got it. Okay, so I actually caught this on the other side for whatever reason, didn't think to account for this one, but right here should be a slab. There you go. Because that was powering the rail, screwed up everything. Got it. So yeah, I'll just be doing updates for this thing, and then if it goes really well, and I'm super happy with this, I'll build it in survival, actually. However, there are things like there's just a mess of wiring down here, and I'm not going to dock everything. I'm just going to go ahead and figure this all out, and then show you guys what I come up with. I fixed the farm off camera. Just wanted to show you guys. So all this can be hooked up to a lever. Isn't that slick? I love using powered rail wiring. It's my favorite. I'm doing this on camera, and I'm not sure why, but this clone should bring the roof down a whole block. So one thing I was noticing, I mean, it can't matter. It really can't. But let me just turn on block sounds right before I do this. What I noticed is the items often fly up, and that means that they might be out of range of the minecart. I'm not even entirely sure if that's true. But I thought, you know, maybe it'll be more efficient if the minecarts can pick it up immediately. And also to have this thing lower to the ground would be better. I don't know, it would look nicer. I'm not entirely sure why Sheen made this 2 blocks high. This was a prototype, so I'm not really going to hold him to anything that he did because it was kind of just a flurry of doing stuff in creative mode. But I think I'm going to go with the lower profile and bring this whole glass level down a block. Side note, I think it'd be nice to color code each of the farms. For example, if this was going to be a poppy farm, I think maybe red glass would be more fitting, and then like magenta for the other, light gray, depending on what's being farmed, and yeah, that could actually look really nice. It is some time later, and this thing is looking pretty sweet. So basically what I've done is made this thing a little bit modular. So there are leftover things like that observer and that repeater, where this whole design can be set up to be configured. So what I figure is this dispenser triggers once every 8 or so-ish game ticks, and that would normally keep up with a normal hopper, but I made this clock just a typical slow design, and it ran. I didn't even need to do the math. I counted up the items just in my head and was like, oh, that's not nearly as many as before. So I put on a super fast clock to distribute the bone meal, and I basically ripped out all the fancy wiring. What he was trying to do was create an AND gate so that when this thing runs out of bone meal, um, it shuts itself off. What I've done is gone the easy route, and that's just when this bottom dropper runs out of bone meal, it shuts this thing off. Technically, it would still have 18 stacks to go, but I don't know. What this would really do would be like, it would trigger some kind of clock at a mass reservoir of bone meal, and then it would just send it over through these hoppers. That's probably the most reasonable thing instead of just turning the farm off. When you turn it on, the piston actually powers this long comparator delay, and that's just so that these droppers have time to empty out all their items. Let's just make it destroy all that. And so the farm is actually pretty functional right now. I mean, there's really not a whole lot else left to do. I've cleaned it up at the top here to make it as less visible as possible. I've used observers and rails wherever I can. You can see it turns off in a snap, and then it just continues on just for a short while. And this delay is almost perfect to empty out the dropper every single time because you don't want leftover stuff in there. Because if it doesn't empty out now, it won't empty out later, and then eventually, you know, fast forward a couple of years and the observers and the droppers are completely backed up all the way. The reason I left this observer is so that you can use a smaller clock, which is mostly enough. I just wanted a super long one to be safe. Otherwise, that's it. The only quote drawback is the fact that these minecarts I mean, every once in a while will have items left over. I can't really get a good angle to see if any of them have anything. There you go, a couple flowers here and there. And that's really not a big deal because they unload immediately once you turn the farm back on. So it's like having items stuck in a hopper filter. Like, it's not really lost, they're just not collected yet. Alright, so I have no idea when I recorded last. I honestly just started watching Casey Neistat videos, tinkered with this a bit, came up with something I was happy with, and then never touched it again. So I kind of just spoiled it there, but you can see Sheen and I were talking just now. He's in the call right now. He
Oh,
told
what the
me
fuck,
that,
you're recording?
yep, hi.
Um,
Anyway, he told me his idea was to have the glass at the top level of the grass, and I actually have to agree. I think that's much better than the exposed wiring. And then you get to actually look down on it when it's working. Let me just demonstrate that real quick. And then I did just a little bit of extra stuff, and I ringed it with grass. And this is like, okay, when it's running, it's blinky and terrible, and you can't even see it that well. And that side's not working because I must have messed something up, but when it's off, like this is about as good as it gets. I mean, there's no exposed wiring. It looks totally clean. The only problem is these rows of grass here and here can actually turn the grass below into dirt. It's a marginal decrease in efficiency. I can't imagine it would make that big of a deal. Um, because these grass will grow back into grass pretty fast, and they're on the outskirts anyway, so it's really not too big of a. That's where I went wrong. So I changed this on the other side. I had to actually lower the wiring a bit. Doesn't change anything at all. It just needs to go down here, add a dust, and it updates. All good. And so I really, really like this. I'd venture to say that this would be just about exactly how we'd build it. Sheen asked the question, how are we going to control it? I think there will probably just be a lever room where we store all the flowers, and then this will just control all the types. So at some remote location, you'll just flick a lever that'll find its way, power that middle powered rail, and just like that, however many
but
blocks away,
what if we log out while the farm's still running and the
then
mine
everything
cart
goes to
stops in
hell,
the
and then
middle
we'll
of
probably
the
just
track?
have to load it back up.
Okay, but don't no minecart stop in the middle of the tracks if we.
Yeah, no, it's bad. It would be heavily advised to not log out while this is running.
I think how we combat that is while the farm is running, we have the nether portal and it seals itself up
hmm
so that people can't leave voluntarily.
I was afraid of logging out.
Oh yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
I guess that's just kind of a thing that we'll have to look for. Worst case scenario, we can chunk load the area while it's running. And then obviously we'll produce enough flowers. Just shoot the seeds through another portal. It'll keep itself going. Um, but yeah, that's definitely something to consider. Lastly, I just wanted to mention that Sheen had a bunch of comparators down here to start with because this is not turning off the way I wanted it to for some reason. You know what? I bet this... No, I thought maybe that was powered on. This is supposed to actually toggle the piston back and forth, but it's not been doing that. This clock is supposed to be off when the farm is off, just to reduce some lag. What Sheen had was he was reading from all of the different droppers, so that only when all of them were empty did it actually start requesting bone meal, and then when any of them were less than full, it actually started turning on the clock, and that was just to reduce lag. And I agree with that. I just need to. I don't know why this is working. I'll tinker with that later, but yeah, that's basically the change, and we might make some marginal changes to the actual wiring, but as far as this look goes, even in the marginal decrease in efficiency, I just, this is too perfect. And of course, as mentioned earlier, we can color code the glass with each of the flowers.